Managing and sustaining relationships, both professionally and personally, is essential not only to your success, but to the enrichment of our lives. I'm talking about the friendships we've all lost because we moved to that new city. I'm talking about the mentors we once had, but lost touch with because we stopped reaching out. Also talking about the opportunities we've all likely missed because we forgot to follow up with the right people. Now, many of us can make this mistake. It's very easy to underestimate the importance of the relationships you have. As you go on in life, it's natural to lose people, especially as you grow as a person, but this isn't about those instances. For many people, this problem doesn't seem to get better as time goes on. Over time, you may move around a little bit, lose a few people here and there. Eventually, I'm sure there are some people that can attest once you have a spouse and a few kids, it doesn't really leave you with more free time. But for those in my generation, specifically if we look at people kind of between the ages of 20 and 30, the issue of maintaining relationships can seem even more pervasive. This age range is subject to a huge transition period. During this time, people find themselves migrating from job to job, going from city to city, and just finding themselves as they exit college. The worst part about this, perhaps, is there's no concrete solution to this problem. There's no tool that makes it all better instantaneously. Seemingly, the only way to solve it is through your own effort. So why do we let this happen so often? None of us ever feel better as a result of letting a good relationship fall through the cracks, but we keep letting it happen. For a lot of us, especially as we go on through life and we get to points where we find ourselves very busy, it's difficult to maintain these relationships. I'm sure all of us have at least a few friends we would say we couldn't live without, and I'm sure many of us have had professional or even collegiate connections that have been pivotal to our success. And it's funny, it's never a conscious decision of waking up on one day and saying, you know, I love my friend Giuseppe, he's great. I think I'm just going to stop talking to him. It's almost always a much more passive decision of us putting off communication until life inevitably overwhelms us, and before we know it, we haven't spoken to said person in a few years. Now, managing and sustaining these relationships at its core is about beneficial social connection. Throughout our life, we can find a myriad of studies, psychological studies, that suggest that meaningful connections are essential to living a fulfilling life. Meaningful connections can lower your risk of anxiety, depression, increase your self-esteem as well. By neglecting our innate need to sustain social connection, we literally put our own health at risk. Seeing how important it is to manage these relationships is partially intuitive. I'm sure we can all think of the obvious benefits of this, the accelerated career success, the larger professional network, and the access to opportunities most don't have. But to really see what's in store for us as we carry on the mantle of managing our relationships, it almost requires us to look at it through a different lens. Historically speaking, we can look at a figure like David Rockefeller, who at one point in time was the chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, which another time about 100 years ago was one of the largest banks in America. At the end of his life, he had a Rolodex, and for those that don't know what that is, I'm a little too young to know what that is either, but I had to do a little bit of research to get up here. So a Rolodex was essentially a set of 3x5 note cards. People would write the names of contacts, phone numbers, important details, all that sort of stuff. And at the end of David Rockefeller's life, he had a Rolodex that stood to be 5 feet tall. I'm just 6 feet in these shoes, so that's like right here of just all note cards. And tracking and meticulously taking notes in his relationships like this can at times seem like overkill, but it brought him many new business opportunities and strengthened a lot of his connections. So at this point, we either know or can intuitively guess all the benefits professionally when we take the time to manage our relationships. According to HubSpot, around 85% of jobs are filled through some form of networking, whether that's a prior introduction, referral, or some sort of connection that you would have obtained otherwise. If you work in a client-oriented line of business like financial advising, consulting, or something similar, maybe banking, building these relationships will be pivotal to you earning a living. And we can even look at this issue or topic through a technological lens. Over the last 20 years, we've been blessed with a myriad of technologies that have made managing and tracking these relationships even easier. Many have come and gone, though. I'm sure there may be a few people that remember the initial craze of MySpace in the early 2000s. Funny enough, it actually still exists as a platform, but is not as relevant as Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms like that. Now, many of us are avid users of these platforms, but very few of us take the time to appreciate how beneficial they can be to us today. 100 years ago, the average person's relationships would have been limited to their immediate town or city, and the best form of communication someone would have been the postal system. But now, provided you have someone's phone number, you can message them at any time. Any of you could reach and get in contact with an old friend from high school on Facebook, and I could send a LinkedIn connection request to someone in Europe for an overseas job if I wanted to. But there's another side to this coin. While there's tremendous convenience that comes from things like online messaging, virtual meetings, and things of that variety, these conveniences take away a key piece of relationships that we often find essential, that being the face-to-face interaction when you're in person. So maybe these technologies, maybe these apps aren't as beneficial as we would have previously thought for developing relationships. Maybe they're just beneficial in a different way, but I'll leave that to smarter people to decide. So where does all this leave us? Probably wondering, what do we do now? I had this same thought in my mind when I realized I needed to build better relationships and also cultivate new ones. Last year, eventually, I knew I was going to go into software sales post-graduation, and that led to me developing a myriad of professional connections on LinkedIn, aka spending too much time in the library. And as a result of that, that led to me connecting with account executives at software companies, recruiters, entrepreneurial mentors, and many more. The interesting part about this, though, was last summer, I was doing door-to-door sales, and with the busy nature and the long hours of the job, I found myself talking to friends at college a lot less and not speaking to families frequently. And this was having a dramatic effect on me. I was sleeping poorly, was performing much worse in my job, not to mention the heat that you feel in North Carolina during the summer. And this was having a dramatic effect on me. Eventually, as a result of this negative situation, I knew I needed to develop something that would better my relationships. On the more personal end, this amounted to calling my mother more frequently, speaking to my dad more, and my grandparents as well. And on the more professional end, this included building my own sort of internal system to track my connections and whatnot. The solution that could arise for you could come in a variety of forms. Regardless of whatever your situation is in terms of your relationship troubles, I believe there are a set of steps anyone can follow to assess their relational problems and come to an appropriate solution. Figure out what your problem is and tightly define it. Perhaps you have a bad habit of losing touch with old coworkers, previous board members. Maybe as work gets a little busy, you stop talking to your friends and family as much, or maybe you need a referral for an after-graduation job. Number two, what's the motivator for wanting to solve it? As you embark on the journey of dedicating more time to your relationships, as much as they deserve, this can be a bit time-consuming, it can be a bit laborious, and a strongly defined why is going to help motivate you as you embark on that difficult journey. And last but not least, put together a plan detailing how you can fix your relationship. This can come in a variety of forms. Maybe you just need to put some time in your calendar to remind yourself to reach out to those important to you. Maybe you can start taking notes on your phone about, those that are important to you in your network so you can keep up to date with what's important to them. Just know there's no one-size-fits-all solution to this issue. If you can do those three things, whether your relational problems may be personal or professional, I can assure you, you will be on your way to having more meaningful relationships. Thank you.